Hello everyone, the Instant Camera Guy here, and welcome to another video where I will be wiring up one of my PolaVolt battery solutions, but this time with a bit of a twist. Now, I've already released a video showing you guys how to wire in the PolaVolt to one of the small little 2 AAA battery holders, but I wanted to show you another type of battery holder that you can use, which I discovered accidentally. Basically, I was shopping online on Retrospekts online store because I had a client of mine that wanted one of their PolaPack AAA battery solutions. I've talked about this back before. I actually was involved in some beta testing of it and was sent one of the prototypes, but basically this was a AAA battery solution. It's still sold by Retrospekt, and it basically screws onto the base of the camera, providing a little area where you can attach AAA batteries. Well, what I didn't realize is Retrospekt now apparently also sell another version, which they refer to as a tripod adapter, which is basically the same thing but with the electronics missing. Now, it doesn't come with leather. This is one that I've skinned already. But basically, this is the same thing as the regular PolaPack. It's just that it's missing the internal the internal electrics, basically. All the wiring, all the battery terminals are missing. The LED, the PCB, completely gone. And I guess you're supposed to just use this as a way to add strap lugs, which come with it. So the strap lugs go on like so. They fit like that. So it's a way to add a tripod socket and strap lugs to a Model 1 camera that otherwise doesn't have them. Now, I didn't intend on purchasing this. I accidentally purchased it. Basically, because I didn't know this product existed, I added it to my cart without reading the title of the description, which doesn't describe it as a battery adapter, it describes it as a tripod adapter. I looked purely at the photo. I also looked at the price, and what I didn't realize is that, well, I did realize Retrospekt was having a sale, which is why I was on the website, but what I didn't realize is that their website automatically converts US dollars to Australian dollars because I live in Australia. And so I assumed this was the real deal battery adapter at the sale price, and I thought that I was purchasing it for about 70 US dollars, which would have been around the correct price. So you can imagine my surprise when I received the adapter only to find it was missing all of its internal electronics. Now, a bit of an email to and forth between Retrospekt, and I realized my mistake. Although I will admit that the photograph they use to advertise this tripod socket appears to be the exact same photograph that they use to advertise the full spec power pack, and they've just photoshopped out like the little LED and switch. I'm going to throw up the images as a comparison here, and you guys can decide for yourself who was in the wrong. I will admit that I didn't read the description, but I also didn't feel that I needed to. So I ended up being stuck with these battery adapters without any of the electronics inside, and then I realized, why can't I just add my own? And so that's exactly what I did. I realized that the buck converter and 2 AAAs would easily fit inside this thing. All that I would have to do is add some battery terminals. And that's exactly what I've done here. I've added a set on one side and then a set on the other side. And what I plan on doing here is wiring up in the same style as the rear-mounted battery adapter that I usually use on the PolaVolt, but instead adapting it to the Retrospekt battery back, because all the bits and pieces are there. It should work. So the buck converter I'm going to mount around here with some double-sided tape. We're going to feed wires up through the bottom where there's a little gap in the panel, and to facilitate that, I've drilled a little hole in the body panel here. Now, the reason that there's a bigger hole in this bottom panel, despite this being for a Model 1, is I was originally adapting to a camera that had a tripod socket in its chassis, and I scrapped that project, so I just ended up recycling this panel. But because the battery adapter is going to go over the back anyway, you're not going to ever notice that hole, but the smaller hole is what I'll be using to pass wires through. So basically what we should end up with is a camera that works exactly like my other PolaVolt, but adds a tripod socket and strap lugs. The cool thing about this is the dummy battery pack sold by Retrospekt, this tripod adapter, is actually half the price of the standard adapter, and the parts you need to complete it are not particularly expensive. So this is a huge saving, provided that you want to do it yourself. All I purchased from my local electronics store was a little 4 AAA battery holder that I pulled the terminals out of. They were basically a perfect fit for this. I had to file one of them down a little bit. I've used the same wire as I did in my other PolaVolt. It's wired in exactly the same way. And basically what I'm going to do is just assemble this in front of you guys and give it a bit of a test. So I've got a positive battery terminal there that I need to solder on a lead. Really all I'm going to do, the wires as it is here, black is negative, red is positive, purple is for the switch, which I'm going to use as the negative connection on the battery terminals as basically an on-off switch. So the camera will only power on basically when it's erect. If the camera is collapsed, it's going to be powered off. Once it's erected, that rear hinge switch is engaged and is going to act as the camera's on-off switch. If you guys don't realize what I've done here in terms of the wiring, I recommend you go and check out my first video that I did wiring up the PolaVolt, because the wiring is basically the same. I just didn't want to subject you guys to another half an hour of watching me solder, because much like the original PolaVolt video where I explained what I was doing, none of the stuff I'm doing here is particularly difficult. It's just a little bit tedious. So I fed the wires through the bottom here, and basically what I'm doing, I'm just going to tug on them so that I can see them come through here, and basically just make sure that as this flattens down, that everything falls into place. Now, another thing that you could do, you could solder these wires directly onto the positive and negative at the base of the camera as well. Obviously, the hinge switch is still ideally better off coming out somewhere around the back, but I just decided to wire in all of the terminals into the rear. You could have used the positive and negative here if you wanted to. But yeah, I'm just making sure, yep, everything's looking good there. Now what I'm going to do is poke the wires into the Retrospekt battery adapter itself. Now there's a whole bunch of screws which are falling out here. These are the longer screws that hold the battery adapter in place. We've also, we can't forget the strap lugs. But basically what I'll be doing, there's these little cutouts in the back. That's going to be perfect to feed those wires through. So I am basically just going to feed the wires through like so. There we go. And one of them I just need to poke into place. Sorry if you guys can't see what I'm doing here. But yeah, I've basically now pulled the wires through both halves of the adapter. And what I'm going to do now is just add the strap plugs, which need to click in like so. And now we can basically put the screws in place. So I'm just going to do this diagonally first. Retrospekt also supply some little screwdrivers that come with the camera as well, that come with the battery adapter, I should say. Let's see, is that going in? there we go. That's one screw in. And I'm just gonna, I'm basically just gonna install all the screws. Pull on all these wires, making sure there's no slack. And yeah, effectively then we're gonna route some of those wires around and get soldering. I'm just gonna collapse the camera to do this bit. I've got the door of the camera just off to the side there. Now this camera has also had its shutter converted to the SX70R PCB. I obviously haven't calibrated it yet because the camera hasn't had a power source. But I'm just letting you guys know, obviously this mod would work with a standard shutter as well. All right, so now let's move some of these cables around. So I'm putting in the purple one first. And what I'm doing here, I'm just tucking the cables under just so that they have somewhere nice to sit, basically. All right, now the first wire I'm going to wire in is going to be for the negative on the battery terminal. I've already tinned the leads here, and I already have the positive terminal sitting over to the side. So this should literally just be a matter of holding the wire together and melting the solder. Do you know what? I probably would just take out the terminal to do this just because it's a little fiddly. No, actually, no, I can get in there. In the future, I'll probably do that, but for now, I'll just, I'm just trying to do it at an angle where the camera can see it. It's a little tricky. Okay, great. I'll add a bit of extra solder to that just to make sure it's a good connection. Wonderful. All right, so one of the wires from the switch is going to the negative. The other wire from that is going to go to the input of the buck converter. Now the buck converter I'm going to hold in place using some double-sided tape. So that same automotive body molding tape that I spoke about in the last video. It's just that this time it's going to be used to hold the buck converter down. And the cool thing is there's heaps of room inside the chassis here. There's oodles of room. The chassis is obviously also made of plastic, so nothing can really short out. So what I'm going to do here, I'm literally just going to stick this down. I'm going to grab out another buck converter, one that I haven't modified, just so that I can read the bottom of the PCB as a reference to know which one's input and output, since it's silk screened in on the rear. And yeah, basically I'll just, so it looks like, yeah, okay. So input side is the side with the chip, output side is the side with the VR. And the input is the side, well, obviously it's going to be the side where the two negatives are connected, basically, so I can always check that. But basically, input side is the side with the chip. But that makes sense, of course, because the chip is what processes the voltage. So let's just get that double-sided in there. That ain't going anywhere. And I'm going to now start to tin some of the wires and start inserting them. Great. Again, just making sure, yep, that's the negative. I will just need to wire in a positive. So the positive from the battery, let's see, that color can be... What color haven't I used? Let's make that green. I've got a little spare piece of green wire here. And I'll just wire in the positive battery terminal. Now, I ended up sticking a spare pair of terminals on the other side. They aren't going to be attached to anything, but what that will function as, that's going to hold spare batteries. So you'll actually be able to hold 4 of these lithium AAAs in the camera, but you're only ever going to be using 2 at a time. So that means you're going to be able to carry spares, which is pretty cool. All right, just wiring in positive. Push positive terminal in, pull it to the side, and yeah, this doesn't need to be quite so long, so I'll cut it. Tin it. And again, just checking, yep, that's going to be positive input. And we're nearly done. It's literally 2 more wires and we are finished. So these wires, I'm hoping will still fit once I move them across. But they're kind of short, so they might not. I might need to actually route them the other way and just poke a little hole. I didn't intend on... Oh no, this will fit. This will work, I'm pretty sure. Yep, it fits. Great. There's just enough length on those wires. Yeah, I didn't intend on wiring this battery adapter up like this. I literally only discovered this by mistake. This was originally going to be one of my normal PolaVolt mods, but when I figured out this could be done, I decided to make this video. All right, now the last one then is the negative. And then this should just straight up work. So just push the black wire in. I hope you guys can see what I'm doing, by the way. This is very fiddly work. Maybe I'll take a photo on my phone of the finished result, just so you guys can get an idea of how it's all wired together. Now, obviously, if I did this in the future, I would probably leave a bit of extra length on some of these wires, just to make it easier to put together. But this is all going to work fine. There's more than enough room. All right, wonderful. I'm just going to shake out a little. Right, so just double check everything. So we've got all of our purple wires. So that goes from negative into the switch down here, and then into the input of the buck. Positive goes straight into the input of the buck. Positive then comes out of the buck into the camera, and then comes, yeah, out of the buck and into the negative. Yep, also into the camera. And I've already put a fixed resistor on this buck converter instead of variable. So that means we should just be able to close that down like so, put the door of the camera back on, and beautiful. Well, that works like a charm. And basically collapsing the camera will cut the power. So yeah, let me just take a photo of what I've done here, but that is effectively how it should be wired up. Actually, I realize my phone is downstairs, so there you go. Now, in my opinion, this solves basically the biggest problem of the Retrospekt battery adapter, which is that AAA batteries can be a bit of a crapshoot in terms of whether or not it'll be powerful enough to run your camera. My experience with the Retrospekt adapter is that some cameras work really well, like especially a Model 1, but other cameras such as the Sonar and especially the SLR 680 just do not work very reliably with AAAs. They last like a pack or two of film, and then the camera can be prone to jamming if the voltage of the alkaline batteries just can't get enough electricity out, basically. You just can't get enough current flowing through the various, through the actual camera itself, through the adapter back. I've had a lot of discussions, like with the guy that created this, with another technician in the UK about the use of AAA power. And I've just come to the conclusion lithium-ion batteries, just given that they have that very solid voltage supply without any drops, are just far more reliable to use in cases like this. And so I think adapting the Retrospekt back in this way is going to provide a much steadier power supply, and one where you can keep spares. Like it's really cool. But yeah, that's basically it. That's all I wanted to show you guys. As I said, these are literally half the price of the regular one with the normal standard alkaline AAA wiring. In my humble opinion, this is a much better option because the lithium ion is just way more powerful than alkaline will ever be. And yeah, it's certainly an option that I'm happy to offer people. If you want to supply your own Retrospekt AAA adapter, then I'm happy to do this mod for you. Tripod adapter, I should say. If you're happy to supply your own Retrospekt tripod adapter, and then we fill in the missing pieces, then yeah, this is a pretty cool modification to do. I hope you guys like this video. As always, if you like what it is that I do, feel free to make a donation through my Ko-fi account, or simply send something my way to be refurbished. It's the best way you could say thanks. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.